Once upon a time, and long ago, there was a man who was a shoemaker. But times were hard, and work hard though he did, he found less and less money was coming into the house. One day, the poor man, he was so poor that he only had enough money to buy leather for one more pair of shoes. Well, he bought the leather, he worked at it, he prepared it, he cut it out, and at the end of the day, he put that cut out leather onto his workbench next to his tools, and he ate with his wife the little food they had, and he went to bed, ready to start work again on the shoes next morning. But when he got up and went to his workbench, he could not believe his eyes, for there, instead of the leather cut out and waiting for him to work, the shoes were already made. A pair of shoes. He picked them up. He looked at them. So beautifully made. Each stitch so neatly placed. Oh, well, he could not believe his luck. He took those shoes. He put them in the window. And it was not long before a customer walking by saw the shoes, admired them greatly, came in, bought them, and for a good price too. And so it was. Very soon, the shoemaker, he had enough money to buy leather for 2 pairs of shoes. Yes. Well, he bought that leather. He worked at it, he prepared it, he cut it out. And at the end of the day, he put the cut-out leather on his workbench next to his tools, and with his wife, he ate the little food they had, and he went to bed. Now, the next morning, when he got up and went to his workbench, you know what he found. Yes, no more cut-out leather. This time, there were 2 pairs of shoes. Just as beautifully made as the ones the day before. And so it was again. Very soon, those 2 pairs of shoes were sold. And so it was. This time, he had enough money to buy leather for 4 pairs of shoes. And again, he worked so well, he cut out the leather. And at the end of the day, he left that cut out leather with his tools on his workbench. And with his wife, he ate the food they had and he went to bed. And you know what happened the next morning. Yes. And so it went on, day after day. And at last, the poor shoemaker was poor no longer. Why, he had enough money coming in. They lived a good life. And yet, each and every evening, whatever leather he had put out, the next morning, the shoes had been made. Well, the shoemaker and his wife, now they were indeed prosperous. They were living comfortably. And the time was coming to Christmas. And his wife, she turned to him one evening and said, "Husband, do you know, instead of going to bed tonight, let us wait up and just see who is helping us." And so they did. They hid behind the door of the workshop. And as they heard the great bell in the church clock tower tolling midnight, out they saw, jumping out and onto the workbench, 2 little men. 2 little men with long hair and wearing nothing else. Stark naked they were. But they picked up the tools and they worked so fast, they worked so nimbly. Why, it was not long before all that leather had been turned into shoes. And then the little men, they disappeared. Husband, husband, it's the elves have come to help us. Husband, look at them, so helpful, working so hard, and yet stark naked, freezing with cold. Husband, I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll make them some clothes, and you make them 2 little pairs of shoes, and we'll leave those gifts to show our thanks. And so, the next day, they did. The good wife, why, she knitted, she knotted, she snipped and she sewed. She made those clothes. She made little socks. She made underwear. She made a pair of trousers, a nice shirt and a warm jacket and a little hat to go on top. And her husband, yes, he snipped and he sewed and he hammered as well. And 2 beautifully made pairs of shoes were there. And that night, yes, it was Christmas Eve, and they brought their presents down, and that evening there was no leather cut out. Instead, just the clothes and the shoes, as the good couple hid behind the door. Once more, the bell in the church clock tower began to toll midnight, and out jumped the little men onto the workbench. But this time their eyes opened wide in delight, and they picked up those clothes. Oh, and they danced and they danced and they were happy. They pulled on their socks, they pulled on their underclothes, they pulled on their trousers, they buttoned their shirts, their jackets, their hats on top. And the little shoes, they put on their feet and they laced them up, and they danced some more. And then they danced right out of the door. And those elves were never seen again. But the shoemaker and his wife, they continued to live happily and prosperously ever after. And that is the end of my tale.